Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry I can't be with you all in person today, but thank you for letting me say a few words. First and foremost, congratulations, David Rehbein, as incoming National Commander. And congratulations, Marty Canastra, for your steady leadership of the Legion. We are all proud of you in Illinois, and thank you all in the American Legion. It is a privilege to address so many who have given so much for our country. As we speak, America is fighting 2 wars abroad. We honor the service of the men and women defending our security and our values in distant lands, and the sacrifice of their families back home who suffer their absence. Last month, I traveled to Iraq and Afghanistan, and the most important opportunity I had was the chance to thank the troops in person. They're paying a high price and bearing a heavy burden, but their strength of spirit is extraordinary. In each of them, I saw the true greatness and the core decency of this country that we love. In Iraq, our military has performed brilliantly in helping to lower the levels of violence. Iraqi security forces are more capable. Shia militias have generally respected a ceasefire, and Sunni tribes have taken the fight back to al-Qaeda. The result is a substantial improvement in the security situation on the ground. Those are facts, and every American welcomes them. The political progress that was the purpose of the surge still lags, though. Since the surge began, we have lost over 1,000 American lives and spent $200 billion. But the Iraqi political leadership still hasn't made the hard compromises or substantial investments in rebuilding their country. Let me be clear. Our troops have completed every mission they've been given. It's time to press the Iraqis to take responsibility for their future. The best way to do that is a responsible redeployment of our combat brigades, carried out in close consultation with commanders on the ground. According to military experts, we can safely redeploy at a pace that removes our combat brigades in 16 months. After this redeployment, we'll keep a residual force to target remnants of al-Qaeda, to protect our service members and diplomats, and to train Iraqi security forces if the Iraqis make political progress. Iraq's prime minister has embraced this time frame. Now it's time to succeed in Iraq by turning Iraq over to its sovereign government. Ending the war responsibly will allow us to invest in America, to strengthen our military, and to finish the fight against al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan and the border region of Pakistan. This is the central front in the war on terrorism. This is where the Taliban is seizing territory. This is where Osama bin Laden and the same terrorists who killed nearly 3,000 Americans on our own soil are hiding and plotting 7 years after 9/11. This is a war we have to win. As Commander-in-Chief, I will have no greater priority than taking out these terrorists who threaten America and finishing the job against the Taliban. I've called for over a year for additional U.S. troops, as well as more non-military assistance and more support from our NATO allies. I'm glad there's a growing consensus back home that we need more resources in Afghanistan. We should not wait any longer to provide them. So make no mistake, when I am president, we will win this war. And I will always honor and uphold the commitment America makes to every man and woman who has served in its uniform. Because without that commitment, I might not be here today. My grandfather enlisted after Pearl Harbor and went on to march in Patton's army. My grandmother worked on a bomber assembly line while my grandfather was gone, and my mother was born at Fort Leavenworth. When my grandfather returned, he went to college on the GI Bill, bought his first home with a loan from the FHA, and moved his family west, all the way to Hawaii, where he and my grandmother helped raise me. I knew my grandfather when he was older, but I think about him now and then as he was as an enlisted man of 23. Fresh-faced, with a wise guy grin. Whenever I see our best and bravest young men and women signing up to serve today, I think about him. They're signing up at a time when the dangers we face are great. And when they finally return home, and the guns fall silent, and the cameras are turned off, they deserve the same commitment from their government that my grandparents received. That's why I sought out a seat on the Veterans Affairs Committee when I arrived in the Senate, so I could fight to serve our veterans as well as they have served us. I led a bipartisan effort to improve outpatient facilities at places like Walter Reed, because recovering troops should go to the front of the line and they shouldn't have to fight to get there. We passed laws to give family members health care and a year of job protection so they never have to choose between caring for a loved one and keeping a job. And I fought to make sure that the claims of disabled veterans were heard fairly. But there's so much more we need to do to keep our sacred trust with the men and women who serve. That's why, as president, I will build a 21st century VA that gives every service member electronic copies of medical and service records upon discharge, fully funds VA health care, adds more vet centers, and passes on-time budgets. No more red tape, no more shortfalls, no more delays. We will stand up against proposals to ration care and reject the idea that the VA should only treat combat wounds. And we'll have a simple principle for veterans sleeping on our streets: zero tolerance. I will build on the work I did in the Senate to confront as well the two signature injuries of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan: post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. And when our loved ones return home, it's time we offered them the same commitment we offered my grandfather's generation, by giving every veteran the same opportunity that he had under the GI Bill. Unlike Senator McCain, I was an early and strong supporter of my friend Senator Jim Webb's 21st century GI Bill that recently passed through Congress. In fact, if it weren't for the American Legion, we might not have had this GI Bill in the first place. After World War I, too many returning soldiers were left to fend for themselves, with no guarantee from their government or a dollar to their name. As servicemen began to come home from World War II, the Legion stood up and demanded that Washington hold up its end of the bargain. Legionnaires turned to the American people, who bombarded Congress with telegrams and letters from all across the country in support of free education and pay for each veteran to keep him on his feet as he looked for a job. On the day of the final vote on a bill to provide those benefits, a congressman whose vote was needed to break the tie was nowhere to be found. State police searched car to car. Radio stations put out the word. When he was discovered, he said, "You bet I'll get to Washington." A police escort whisked him to a waiting place and arrived at the Capitol late at night to cast the deciding vote on that groundbreaking piece of legislation that began as a draft written in longhand by a Legionnaire. It told our heroes that when you come home to America, America will be here for you, because we are all in this together. And it didn't just create the greatest middle class in world history. It allowed millions more in the generations that followed to inherit opportunity they wouldn't have otherwise had. People like me. 2 weeks ago, I visited the Punch Bowl, the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, lined with the graves of Americans who have sacrificed for our country. As I stood at my grandfather's grave, I remembered the day we laid him to rest. We heard the solemn note of taps and the crack of guns fired in salute. We watched as a folded flag was handed to my grandmother. It was a nation's final act of service and gratitude to him, an America that stood by my grandfather when he took off the uniform and never left his side. That's the commitment America made to her soldiers. That's the commitment you've made for almost 90 years. And should I have the distinct honor of being your Commander-in-Chief, I will lead this nation in rededicating itself to that commitment, to serving those who have worn the uniform of the United States as well as they have served us. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.